These players forgot to buy the battle pass and it's ruined their game multiple times. And it's because of this tank that they really should have learned better, and why not doing the battle pass has cost you in both enjoyment and a ton of extra rewards that you get along the way that are 100% worth it if you play any decent amount of World of Tanks. And if you don't believe me, just look at this clip right here and find out exactly how you can take these things out if you don't want to buy the battle pass. Getting into the nitty gritty of why this video was even made in the first place is to raise awareness of how good the Cobra is, and of course you can get it for an extremely cheap price if you were to look at it in terms of how expensive it would be to pick this thing up. I mean, if you bought all 3 stages of the battle pass you would be able to get this vehicle, and of course this season and the previous season count towards the same thing, so you can use all of your battle pass tokens together, so you don't even need to buy the seasons in like one go, so you don't have to buy them all from the same season. So season 9 and season 10 all have the same tank, which is of course varied depending on the season. You find yourself up with various different tanks, which is why I wanted to show the Cobra today, because in my opinion it is one of the most powerful, and hence why you've seen it been able to clip a ton of vehicles. And the first replay that we do have, we've got 3 which are amazing replays. I'm going to show you a whole bit about this vehicle, which is what I wanted to show you guys, and how you can also take this thing out, because there are a few weak points, there are a few things that we can highlight on, so that if you ever find yourself coming up against this thing, you'll know how to take it out, where a lot of the enemy team, obviously within this game so far, haven't. But straight away in this game we have the Cobra. Now the Cobra has 490 damage per shell when it's using its Hesh rounds, and unfortunately there you're seeing one of the problems of using Hesh rounds is that as soon as you start coming up against opponents that have any level of armor above 210mm, it will become a bit of a problem, which is one of the things that a lot of people don't realise, and also they don't take advantage of the fact that this tank uses Hesh rounds. So when a tank uses Hesh rounds, and of course as most people realise, Hesh rounds have the one key weakness, is that when you're firing against these super heavily armoured vehicles you often can't pen from the front. But that is exactly why you should move around areas to be able to get damage, and why you need to be an ultimate flanker, and why the Cobra becomes a super lethal force when you can find opponents from the backside, and when you use the mobility of the Cobra, which is to all intents and purposes pretty decent, 40 kilometers an hour top speed, allowing you to reposition and find opponents, like for example this gorilla right here, who is going to be finding himself in a bit of a sticky situation like we saw previously with the other gorilla. Now the gorilla is of course, or was, on full health, and within just 3 shots the gorilla loses the majority of the hit points and he ends up taking him out, which is perfect. Now in this situation it's a 2 versus 2, and the Cobra is very good in these late game scenarios because you have the ability to either fire your Hesh rounds when you need them, and with intuition in the game you can swap between your rounds quite easily, but you also have the power of using those Hesh rounds when you find yourself up against those kind of lightly armoured vehicles, things for example like the Skoda T50. And the good thing is that in this late game you typically know what you're up against, you know the sort of hit point pool, and so using the rounds becomes easy. You know exactly what rounds you should be firing and you can use that to your advantage. And when you have the knowledge of knocking down a building that is obviously destructible that the Skoda was trying to hide behind, you can gloat on him with your final shell. And there you go, a ton of damage with a 1960 damage total clip, and picking up nearly 9,000 total damage in this game and winning. But that's not all in today's video, because we have another one that is equally as good, and in fact playing it on a town map that requires you to poke and usually end up trading. But this one is a really smart one because we can find out how he can use the tank to be able to move around the map and actually end up getting more damage than you typically expect. And although you would typically think that the side of tanks are the bits that you want to be aiming for, you could see there the WZ ended up finding out that this tank can pen you straight from the front as well, because 210mm is more than enough for a lot of vehicles. And as soon as you start finding the opponent's misplays, just preying on them, you can use the advantage of this vehicle to come away with a lot of damage. And it is what makes this vehicle so dangerous, so annoying for the enemy team, is that if they make that one misplay, if they miss you, if they put themselves in a position where you could potentially roll up from the front if they're in a medium, or for example poke out from a corner, you can take them out very quickly. And with only a 1.5 second intra-click reload with a gun that does 490 if you can pen, or if you're not using the HE and you're using the heat ammunition with 268 pen, you can do 360 damage. And within a minuscule amount of time, you can have dealt, 1,000, 1,500, and at the pinnacle, you can deal 1,960. And if you roll high on every single round, if you rolled the max roll, obviously it's very, very unlikely that you would ever do that. You could even deal up to 2,400. And this play right here was an excellent one. He obviously moves up to this location where you can get side shots on things like the Conqueror as the enemy team have pushed. And it seemed like a game where the enemy team had control of the majority of the map. But unfortunately for them, they kind of, threw it all away at the end. And you can see here the Cobra struggling to pen those heavily armoured vehicles, and that is the real weak point of this tank in particular. And also, as soon as you start opening yourself up to damage, you can get hit by things like the Futura there, for example, and you also have a ton of opponents that can pen you in the hull armour. The turret is a little bit bouncy, and yeah, a bit of a problem. But when you play this thing as a damage dealer and you understand that sometimes you need to take a hit to deal, 1,000 damage or more, you could see it ends up very well, and he could take out nearly a full health T26E5 Patriot there. But because he's been dealing so much damage in this game, he's now running out of rounds, and with just 2 heat rounds left and another Battle Pass tank coming swiftly up his backside, but unfortunately the Futura having a much longer intra-click reload, he's going to find himself back in the garage where he belongs. But that does end up with him running out of rounds, which is not particularly ideal in this sort of game, but nonetheless still has a fantastic result and picks up a ton of damage, securing the win and 8,500 damage, which is why it transitions into the next replay where we see the highest damage out of the lot of them, but also where we see how the Cobra can fit into the meta right now and why you're going to be wanting to pick this tank over some of the others that we have in the game, because there are a ton of Battle Pass tanks. You have the BZ58-2, you've got the new KPZ, the Swedish, the German version of the Swedish tank destroyer. You have a load of vehicles in the Battle Pass, the AE Phase 1, some of the older ones. You have, of course, the Futura, like we talked about, which is a solid pick, and in fact, it would be my #1 pick if you are unsure or if you don't think you're going to be able to pick up the Cobra. It's far more achievable, and it should be something that you're able to achieve to get. But of course, it isn't as fun as the Cobra, and you don't have that feeling of being able to remove a full health tank in a matter of seconds. And yeah, dealing 1,960 damage puts you up there with things like the FE4005, with how dangerous you can be when you do find yourself in these sorts of games. And especially when you're top tier in a game, you can feel like a dominating force. And when you combine that with the fact that you can reposition, like for example this position right here, it allows you to do so much damage. And although the AE Phase 1 on the enemy team seemed like a bit of a bot, I mean, he went straight past the Cobra rather than trying to deal with him, which, as we all know, when you leave your ass open to interpretation, the Cobra is going to tell you what it's all about. And he shuts him down there, and then of course goes for the defender's backside as well, so penning all of his shots there. But to make matters worse for the enemy team, he ends up setting the defender on fire, which we love to see. And this is the sort of thing you can expect with the Cobra. You can also expect being taken out. Now, the key weak points of the Cobra itself are that it is very kind of it is lame when you do end up fully unloading. That is because it has a 48-second reload base. So of course, dependent on how you're setting up your crew, dependent on how you're setting up your equipment, this tank can be a little bit difficult. Of course, key equipment is to have a vertical stabilizer in this vehicle so that you do get to be able to fully aim during that intricate reload, which is very short. And that's something you're going to be wanting to do. But if you can catch this thing out on reload, or you know that it's clipped someone, then it is super imperative that you take this thing out, or it's going to be happening to you like it's been happening to all of the rest of the tanks that the Cobras have been going up against in these couple of clips. And so I really hope I gave you a little bit of an overview, the kind of benefits of having, of course, this vehicle in the game, and some of the negatives as well. I mean, these tanks are a little bit annoying for the majority of players. I mean, they're pretty how do we say, annoying for anyone that is trying to play, and one of these things just YOLOs you. And of course they're available to anyone that just pays money, and it isn't even that expensive, so the monetization aspect of this vehicle doesn't put that many people off. It's about £20 if you want to buy 3 season passes, and with gold that is, and a lot of you have gold on your account anyway, so it's not even costing you anything to get this thing. So yeah, a very, very dangerous tanks. And as I said in this video, there are a few other things that you can do against this one, which is of course going up against the side armor of the Cobra. You have things where you're able to just YOLO it, which make it super annoying. But a lot of the time, what you want to do is playing in this tank, making sure that you don't overcommit and hiding behind buildings, putting cover between you and the opponents, making it so that if anyone does try and YOLO you, it's not going to be worth it by having team support mainly, or at least opening up a huge angle for your team to be able to hit them. And that is going to serve you very well in this video. And if you have enjoyed this one, it was a quick and short one, but hopefully showing off the Cobra and why the players on the enemy team that didn't buy the battle pass are probably having a hell of a lot less fun than these ones. But other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day. Make sure to subscribe and like for the algorithm, and if you want to see more, don't forget to check out some of the other content on the channel. There is a ton of it, and hopefully you'll enjoy that too. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.